Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just dive right into it. If you work anywhere near industrial manufacturing or, facility management, you already know the daily battleground we're going to talk about today. It's that constant, super high-stakes tug of war between the folks who need the machines running and the folks who need them stopped so they can actually fix them, right? Today, we're breaking down how to finally synchronize maintenance and production. We're talking maximum operational efficiency here. We're going to look at how to stop fighting over time and start managing it together. So, picture that infamous Monday morning scheduling meeting. You totally know the one. The coffee's completely stale, the tension in the room is high, and the schedule? Well, it gets built twice, by two completely different teams with two entirely different sets of priorities. And how does it usually get reconciled? Pretty much by whoever shouts the loudest at the end of the hour. It's a system built entirely on friction, and honestly, it's setting everyone up for failure.
Section 1. The Great Scheduling Showdown. Let's unpack why both sides of this conflict actually have really valid points, but why the traditional way of handling it just means everyone loses out in the end. So, on one side, production's mandate is crystal clear. Run the line every available minute to hit those output targets. Totally makes sense. But then, maintenance's reality is equally unyielding. They absolutely need dedicated windows to do their jobs properly and keep the assets healthy. Both teams are exactly right in what they want to achieve. But because they're operating in these isolated silos, you end up with, 3 different spreadsheets, a messy whiteboard, and 0 actual operational alignment. It's basically a compromise where everyone just gets a little less of what they need to actually succeed.
Moving on to Section 2, the true cost of conflict. Now, this isn't just about frustrating meetings or petty office politics. The financial devastation caused by this departmental friction is absolutely staggering. We are talking $50 billion. Let that sink in. That is the estimated annual cost of unplanned downtime across industrial manufacturers. $50 billion. When your schedules aren't aligned, you're essentially playing a massive, high-stakes game of operational roulette. And guess what? The house always wins. The stakes seriously couldn't be higher for getting this right.
So where exactly is all that money going? Well, a massive 42% of that unplanned downtime is specifically due to equipment failure. And here is the really hard truth. A huge chunk of that 42% traces directly back to maintenance windows that were just bumped, postponed, or outright skipped. And why? Usually it's just to protect a short-term production target that looked amazing on paper for exactly 1 week, right up until the machine literally broke down.
Which brings us to a seriously painful irony. See, when you bump planned work, you inevitably trigger reactive maintenance. And reactive maintenance, it's anywhere from 3 to 9 times more expensive than planned work on that exact same asset. 3 to 9 times. So those production hours you thought you saved by deferring maintenance, yeah, you're paying them back with extreme interest. You're paying for rush parts, you're paying overtime labor, and you're paying for secondary damage from a catastrophic failure that a simple, routine preventative maintenance check would have easily caught. But the costs aren't just financial. There is a quieter, much more insidious long-term cost here, and that's planner credibility. When production learns that the maintenance schedule bends every single time there's a bit of pressure, well, that schedule stops being a schedule. It just becomes a mere suggestion. And let me tell you, rebuilding that scheduling discipline takes far, far longer than just building it right the first time.
Okay, Section 3. 4 levers for alignment. Getting maintenance and production onto one single timeline isn't about having better meetings or singing Kumbaya together. It requires fundamental structural changes to how the schedule is built using shared data. So here's your high-level roadmap. These are 4 actionable strategies that turn scheduling from a heated negotiation into a cold, hard calculation. We're talking a shared criticality ranking, rolling maintenance windows, a single source of truth, and engineered buffer capacity. Let's break these down one by one and see how they can totally transform your process.
Let's start with the very first lever, shared criticality. Both teams absolutely must agree in writing on what is actually critical. Take a pump with no standby and a 6-week lead time on a replacement part. That is highly critical, right? Contrast that with a redundant conveyor motor that's just sitting safely in the storeroom. Not critical at all. Teams have to jointly rank assets based on failure consequence and production impact, not just maintenance costs, because when everyone agrees on what matters most, the schedule practically writes itself.
Moving right along to the second lever, rolling maintenance windows. Look, instead of fighting for rigid, fixed calendar dates, you need to build maintenance windows around your actual production troughs. So if Shift 1 is high demand, you just don't touch it. But if Shift 2 has a planned product changeover, or maybe Shift 3 has historically low demand, boom, those are your maintenance windows. You drag your preventative maintenance tasks right into these natural lulls, instead of forcing a massive argument about it every single week. Now, the third lever is absolutely foundational, a single source of truth. Having two separate calendars pretty much guarantees conflict. You need a computerized maintenance management system, or CMMS, that integrates everything. We're talking work orders, asset availability, and production plans, all sitting in one single shared view. This removes all the guesswork. It eliminates those separate tools that some poor soul has to manually cross-reference. A CMMS that both teams actually use is exactly what turns negotiation into true alignment.
And that brings us to our fourth lever, buffer capacity. Plants that try to run at 100% planned utilization, they have absolutely zero room for a maintenance window without starting a fight. You really have to build 5 to 10% slack into the production schedule specifically earmarked for maintenance. Doing this is huge. It turns downtime from a chaotic, super expensive interruption into a planned, significantly cheaper event. Remember, it is always cheaper to plan for slack than to discover you desperately need it during a catastrophic breakdown.
Section 4. Measuring scheduling success.
Okay, so we've pulled all the levers, but how do we actually know if it's working? Well, it all comes down to a golden ratio. A mature maintenance organization targets 80% planned work and strictly limits reactive maintenance to 20% or less. This is your holy grail right here. If your planned work drops below that 80% mark, scheduling conflicts with production become almost unavoidable, simply because way too much of your daily work is unplanned by its very nature. You just end up constantly putting out fires instead of preventing them in the first place.
So, to ensure you actually hit that 80-20 target, there are specific KPIs you really need to watch. You want to track your preventative maintenance, or PM, compliance rate. You definitely want to track schedule adherence, which means planned versus executed work orders. And critically, you absolutely must track unplanned downtime hours as a percentage of total downtime. The ultimate goal here, a rising PM compliance rate right alongside falling unplanned downtime. That is the absolute clearest signal that your departmental alignment is actually holding firm.
Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking right now. What about emergencies? What about all this new tech? Well, emergency repairs need a defined escalation path that's agreed upon way in advance, not improvised while a machine is literally smoking on the floor. Your CMMS should flag that conflict immediately. And as for predictive maintenance, condition-based triggers give you way earlier warnings than those old calendar-based PMs. Now, it doesn't eliminate the need for a shared schedule, but it drastically reduces unplanned conflict because it gives you massive lead time to actually negotiate that repair window.
Section 5. One schedule, not two. So, wrapping things up, aligning maintenance and production doesn't require any magic. It really just comes down to shared data, agreed criticality, and one single trusted calendar. If you can get those three things right, those shouting matches that used to totally dominate your Monday mornings, they'll disappear, replaced by a super smooth operational plan that everyone actually already agreed to last week. So I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to reflect on for your own operations. Are you building your schedule twice, or are you finally building it right? Stop competing for hours, integrate your data, and turn your downtime into a planned advantage. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.